Good afternoon, members, and welcome to full council. During the meeting today, I will be making rulings on process and conduct during the meeting and would ask council to abide by the standing orders and rules of debate. At certain times, I may seek guidance from my advisors should we need to adjourn. I will inform the council of what is happening and the time for us to reconvene. We all enjoy robust, respectful debate. At the last meeting, there were words and actions that I will consider fell short of the standards we set ourselves. I would ask all members to ensure their words are respectful and behaviour is exemplary. If member speeches run over time allocated, I will allow you to finish your sentence, but ask you to finish as quickly as possible. I would also like to take this opportunity to remind members that there is no local government equivalent of parliamentary privilege. Members will therefore be liable for any defamatory statements they make. If you wish to speak during the meeting, I would ask that you raise your hand and wait for me to invite you to speak. Please raise any points of order verbally. I will then pause the meeting to deal with the point of order. When raising a point of order, please state which procedure, rule or law you believe has been breached. All votes will be conducted by the electronic voting system today. If we receive any amendments to the recommendations before council today, I will adjourn to ensure that all members have had adequate time to read the amendment. Today's extraordinary meeting has been arranged to discuss the council response to the government's white paper for English devolution. I move to item 1, apologies. Are there any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. We've received apologies from Councillors Dingle, Stevens, Holloway, Cudahy, Simpson, Bridgman and Councillor Larry.
Can I ask if there are any further apologies?
Yes, Lord Mayor, the further apologies from Councillor Chip Tulfan, Rebecca Smith and Kathy Watkins and Ian Darcy.
Thank you. Have you got this? Councillor Nicholson.
Lord Mayor, Councillor Leveridge, please.
Anybody else I've missed? No? Right. I move to item 2 on the agenda, declaration of interest. Can members please make it known by raising their hand if they have any private or disclosable pecuniary interests in any of the matters of today's agenda? My advisor will take a record of the interests declared. No? That's fine. Thank you. I move to item 3, the English Devolution White Paper. Given the significant nature of this issue, following discussions with the leader of the council, I would like to move that we suspend standing orders to remove the time limits on speeches for group leaders on this item. Deputy Lord Mayor, do you second my proposal?
I'll second your proposal, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, councillors. We will now move to the vote. We will vote using the electronic voting systems. Green to vote in favour of the resolution, red to vote against, and amber to abstain. That's it, isn't it? No. The motion is carried. Councillor Evans, would you please move the report?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Before Christmas, the government published a paper that for many of us has been a long time coming. Councils up and down the country continue to find themselves in increasing peril thanks to growing pressures and demands. It's been clear for quite some time that something's got to give. If we are all honest, previous government's approach to local government reform was lacklustre. What councils need is real, sustained change. Now, Labour made it a priority election pledge and have delivered within months of being in charge. The new government's white paper, Power and Partnership Foundations for Growth, outlines what must be seen as the biggest local government shake-up since the early 1970s. Now, the paper has a clear vision: hand out more powers and more funding to local areas to drive real, sustained change in every region. In a nutshell, the Labour government wants to give local areas more skin in the game and to unleash the powers required to really change lives. Now, the devolution of powers and funding to local decision makers will enhance our ability to focus on our priorities such as increasing investments in our roads and on public transport, providing better access to education and skills, tackling health inequalities, and building new homes whilst protecting our green spaces. So today, we're being asked to consider two key parts of the white paper, specifically around devolution and local government reorganisation and what that means for Plymouth. Now, in terms of devolution, unitary councils like ours are being invited to come together to create new strategic authorities as an additional tier of local government, giving cities and regions a bigger voice. Now, the government's clear preference is that strategic authorities are overseen by a democratically elected mayor. At the moment, ministers in Whitehall make strategic decisions about the big issues facing us in our region. This often means our hands are tied about how our money is spent. The new strategic authority model is about us working with other local authorities in the area and have the devolved power to make the big decisions ourselves. It will be a new, equal and respectful partnership between local and central government, trusting us to do what we do best. Government is looking for regional mayors to play a part in public sector reform that is so desperately needed. It's really important that that tier of local government is seen for what it will be. And that's an opportunity for the first time for the peninsula to be together and to speak and act together for the benefit of all of us in the peninsula. And as part of that process, I think it's really important that we need to be respectful of the ambitions of all parts of the peninsula in that regard. We have our own priorities. We have our own identity. But so do those in Cornwall, who've had that enshrined in both the language since 2002 and since 2014 under the coalition government, the heritage and the recognition of the Cornish as an identity all of their own. And any proposals for a Cornwall and Devon and Peninsula Authority needs to be seen in that light and with that respect. So, in order to have local government reform, we need to reform local government itself. And the government has asked us to look at a process of reorganisation. Now, this would be with the aim of empowering local unitary authorities to provide high-quality, sustainable public services. And councils that are sustainable for the future and able to work collaboratively with these new strategic authorities. So again, it's not a question of a strategic authority governing Plymouth, governing parts of Devon, but actually being a new partner with new powers and new authority. It's important to recognise, I think, that while both devolution and local government reorganisation are clearly linked, they are also very separate programmes of work that need to be considered and need to be looked at in that way. So whilst local government reorganisation has a big focus on moving away from the two-tier system, the white paper also reiterates the need that all unitary councils need to be the right size to sustainably survive, and that smaller councils need to ensure that they have the scope to grow and thrive. So what does that mean in practice? If you look at the pattern of English local government, you will see a variety of sizes and shapes of unitary councils. There are some quite large ones, and there are some very small ones. Everybody remembers Rutland, don't they? And we know that some local authorities are so small that it's very difficult in practical terms to A, generate the council tax they need, but B, to attract staff of high enough quality to sustain the services that they need to provide. So there is probably a right number, though what the government aren't doing is prescribing exactly what that number should be and giving itself and us the room to manoeuvre, to enable local authorities to have the right to exist and to deliver those services. Where does that bring us? Well, that brings us in. Now, those of us in this room who've been about a bit will remember what it was like being in Plymouth up until 1997, being run by Devon. And you will remember the overwhelming endorsement that the people of Plymouth gave us for the right to run our own affairs. And I have to say, I think with one or two slip-ups along the way over the last 20 odd years, we've made a pretty good fist of it. So I genuinely believe that Plymouth must continue to run its own affairs. It must continue to run Plymouth and services in Plymouth. But in order to do that, in order to survive, we need to listen to what is being said in the legislation. Now, we've got a tight boundary as a city, right? I mean, literally in Chadwell, you can see the edge of the housing on one side and empty fields on another. So we know Plymouth is tightly drawn. So this gives us an opportunity to expand our boundaries. In the same way as in 1964, when the then Labour government brought in Plympton and Plymstock into Plymouth to increase its council tax base, or not its council tax base, its rateable value in those days, with a view to having sustainability. So it will be in this episode at this time. So there will be a requirement for us to take on more population in order to make a case, A, for sustainability, and B, I think, in terms of the centre of gravity of Plymouth. There's no doubt about it that we have a particular role to play in the sub-region. And there's no doubt in my mind that that needs to be reflected in our right to continue as a local authority. And so we will need to make a powerful case for our own existence, and a powerful case that will resist any threat to us being put out of business as a council and subsumed into a more rural authority. So that point I made about Cornwall and is the point I make about Plymouth being an urban authority. And I'm in particular issues with being an urban authority. So that right for us to retain our distinctive identity is one we want to make. But what we recognise in the legislation is that we won't be able to continue on our current boundaries with our current population. The government will just not wear it. So we need to understand that and to grasp that. So there'll be a lot to do in the next few months. We need to press on with this thing about a strategic authority. Now, the government have indicated that they see strategic authorities as being a population of around 1.5 million or more. So again, a whole Devon solution doesn't do that for us. It doesn't do it for Cornwall, but Cornwall and Devon together, the South West Peninsula together, would certainly be able to deliver that in terms of a population. So that is the preferred Westminster model. That is the preferred way in which they will transfer power, and most importantly, cash from Westminster down. And again, we have spent a lot of time over the last 20 years bidding for money to the government against other local authorities, winners and losers. Sometimes we've won, sometimes we've lost. But what this gives us an opportunity to have is some more automaticity about this, and to actually have a much more powerful and sustainable case for money, and not to have it exercised by the whims of people in Westminster, frankly. That's the prize. So that's why I say, in my view, the only sensible solution now, and sensible ambition for the South West Peninsula is that we should be working towards the creation of a large strategic authority covering the geography of Cornwall, Devon, Plymouth and Torbay. We have a history of working in partnership with these local authorities, and we would continue to do so under a strategic authority as well. And don't forget, authorities under the strategic authority would continue to exist. It's that simple. So, you know, things like the Southwest Regional Defence and Security Cluster, the Plymouth South Devon Freeport, and also the Plymouth Sound National Marine Park, all examples of where we've been working across boundaries. Dare I say the Tamar Bridge? And Devon and Cornwall Police Authority, we seem to get on with each other quite well with that. And now these days, in terms of the Devon and Cornwall Police Scrutiny Panel and the rest. We've got plenty of examples of working together. By coming together to form a large strategic authority, we'll have a combined population, we think, with Cornwall of about 1.8 million. And that, in my view, gives us a seat at the grown-ups table. That puts the South West on the same platform as Greater Manchester, as the West Midlands, as the East Midlands. It gives us that clout. It gives us that centre of gravity. And that will mean, for the first time, that the South West will get a hearing at the top table. They keep dismissing us, and they have done forever, because we've never been able to get our act together and act as one voice. So this is a real chance for us to do that. And if we're able to access those additional powers from central government, with that streamlined local decision making, you know, this is going to unlock real opportunities for our residents and for our businesses. A Southwest Peninsula Strategic Authority covering those geographies, in my view, represents a once in a generation, probably a once in 2 generations opportunity for regeneration and for renewal. Now, I'm clear that we've got to be on the devolution train. It is the only game in town. But what we have to do with that is to ensure that we get the best deal for the peninsula, but believe you me, also the best deal for Plymouth. That's why we're all here. So we don't want to miss the boat. We don't want to be at the back of the queue. It's really important that we move forward, in my view, with pace, but also if we can persuade our partners to all go willingly into this project. We have massive opportunities that are vital to the growth of our city, from offshore wind coming down the track, new sustainable transport infrastructure, the National Marine Park, the continuation of our track record of delivery through our economic development projects, including our £1 billion pipeline of projects. But we also have some very long-term challenges as well as opportunities. Our productivity in this part of the world is only 83% of the national average. 25% of our population are economically inactive. And this is an anchor that's holding us back from really achieving our potential. And doing that collaboratively, regionally, is a way of busting those figures, breaking that logjam. You know, we're in the top 20% of deprived wards in the country, and 12.5% of our children live in poverty. We have a city centre of huge potential, but with only 800 homes in the city centre, there should be 8,000 in a city centre our size, with a population with a city of our size. And last but not least, private sector investment keeps being tripped up because of low land values and development viability pressures. We know we've got a lot of work to do in spite of the achievements that we have made. So we don't want to put our ambitious plans on a back burner or hit stumbling blocks because we are so slow off the mark. We've got enough lined up against us without us making a rod for our own back. Having one clear voice for the wider peninsula would give us a seat at the national table, as I've said. Now, making sure that the decisions, when decisions are made about us, we are in the room. Again, that has happened too many times in the past, that people are talking about us, not with us. That puts us on the same footing as the other regions like Manchester and Liverpool, as I've mentioned before. So, over the last few months, there have been some unhelpful rumours online, believe it or not. I think it's time to play a little whack-a-mole with some of these, if that's all right. So, first things first, creation of a strategic authority for the South West Peninsula is not a merger of councils. It's not a super council, because a council for Plymouth will still exist if we can get the LGR case right. And we'll be part, and along with other upper tier councils in Cornwall and Devon, who will be part of that South West Peninsula Authority. The other thing to say is we can't stay as we are. Status quo is not an option. The government has said this is the only deal in town. The white paper is clear that there should be no devolution islands. In other words, people who have opted out of all of it, they can't do that. The government will compel. Our job is not to let it happen to us, but make the case and make the waves and make the rules. A combined authority without democratically elected mayor, by the way, we could have one, they're called foundations. They get no money and powers to speak of, really, they just let them play. We don't want that. The whole point of this is to get our hands on the reins that too many people that we've never heard of in Westminster hold over us. That's what it's all about. It's about us taking charge. It's about Plymouth politicians and South West politicians deciding things for the South West and for Plymouth. And that's why, in spite of the fact that we've been very anxious about the old project with the mayor, Andy and I have spoken about this on a number of occasions, it is the only way we'll get power and cash down this part of the world. So I'll finish by emphasising what a unique and exciting opportunity this is. We want Plymouth and the wider peninsula to have a bigger voice nationally. We want to be thought of as active participants, not the dog in the manger politicians who can't look outside their own navels. Proud as we are of the Navy, navel gazing is not an option. So we want to be empowered to take decisions that affect the people that we represent. We want to have access to more power, more funding, to be able to deliver better services for our communities and enable our city to grow. The government are being ambitious about devolution, and so should we. This model will result in long-term change in local government, change for the people of Plymouth, and change for the South West Peninsula. Lord Mayor, I move.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Councillor Lugger, I understand you will be seconding the motion?
I will, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Would you like to speak now or reserve your right?
Might I speak now, Lord Mayor?
Certainly.
Thank you. First, my gratitude to the leader of the council for all the hard work he has put into this. I know, Tudor, you've been burning the midnight candle on this with all the various talks. I believe it's 16 conversations you've had in the last week. Is impressive. Every councillor, my Lord Mayor, in this room, every 57, well, we haven't got 57 today, but every councillor in this room has an overriding objective to look after the people of Plymouth. It is local people that must come first when it comes to local decision making. Notwithstanding that this is the most significant reform of local government in 50 years, as Councillor Evans alluded to, I would go further to say this is probably the most fundamental change in the history of local government from its inception, late Victorian times. But despite this, we have been given a ridiculously short time frame to do this. This means that the people of Plymouth have been denied consultation. Now, I fully accept that there is a briefing and that the people of Plymouth will be consulted by government as this evolves. And I take comfort from that, because any unitary restructuring has got to be locally led, and it must, of course, have the support of local people. At present, we have a government diktat. Whether we like it or not, both the Labour Party and the Conservative Party, when in power, have brought about devolution proposals. And devolution and LGR are unavoidable. They're coming. As the leader has emphasised, the white paper states it all. With a massive majority, that is going to be converted into a bill which would pretty much go through Parliament unabated, I would imagine. So, we have devolution. Now's the time to think beyond party politics. Everyone in this room must make a decision today based upon what they feel is right for Plymouth. The political point, the minor one, is this bill, this Labour government white paper came out on the 16th of December, and we have merely 25 days to meet the deadline for tomorrow, which has not given anybody a chance to speak to their residents about it. This is symptomatic of a failing government. I really look across the chamber and I see some great Labour councillors, experts in local government finance, experts in transport. You are a good team. You must be appalled that this government of yours has let down everybody from farmers to pensioners. But let's hope devolution is going to be your redeeming point. I am for devolution. I'm for the proposal before you today. I agree it will revive democracy. I agree it will give us a seat at the top table. Why shouldn't Plymouth and Devonians be involved in the epicentre of politics? Why do we allow Birmingham and the Greater London boroughs to be there and we're not? Let's put this area of the world on the map. I'm also believing that this will safeguard Plymouth's future financially. We talk about the cash from Westminster crisis. Tudor mentioned that earlier. It is a major problem. We do need funding and we do need to survive. So it is with this, my Lord Mayor, it is great pleasure that I second this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lever. Does anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. Good afternoon, members. I rise to support the recommendations before the Council today and support very much the contributions by the leader and the shadow leader of the Council. We've seen the governance of the United Kingdom alter significantly in the last 20 years, and there have been those that didn't support devolution for Wales and Scotland, believing that it was important that all power rest at Westminster. And we've actually seen many positives of devolution for those principalities. And we've then seen the evolution of devolution for local government, principally the mayors that we see around the country at the moment. So I think hopefully we all would support the principle of trying to bring power from the centre, essentially for England, from London and the South East, across the country of England. And the South West, principally in my lifetime as a Plymothian, has suffered significantly from being overlooked on a number of issues that we should have, as a region, tackled with central government. And that has been because the region, principally Devon and Cornwall in particular, doesn't speak with one voice when it comes to certain issues. And I'll just use the highlight, and their members in this chamber have played a significant part in trying to put to government, working with other local government leaders, a resolution of issues like the railway line. You know, it's on the record that the former Member of Parliament for Newton Abbot never wanted really an alternative main line to go via Oakhampton and elsewhere in Devon, because there were benefits, economic developments and tourist benefits of the main line being through Dawlish. So we have had, over the years, conflict or disagreements or a lack of unanimity on resolving some of our peninsular issues. And that's because we all come from, as we do in this chamber, from representing specific communities. So we're interested in our own wards, perhaps more so in some respects than a citywide context. And so you've got members of Parliament looking after their constituencies in the context of a peninsula. You've got the councils, whether it be Cornwall, wider Devon, Plymouth or Torbay, having their view, but taking a view that benefits their principal council areas. And what we failed to recognise as a peninsula, that we have a person elected, having a mandate from the public to speak on behalf of the whole peninsula, with one voice, with one clear message, to try and resolve those many issues that tirelessly Councillor Evans and many others in this chamber and throughout Devon and Cornwall have tried to tackle with central government over a long period of time. And still we've probably got many issues on our shopping list that we've never managed to resolve. Now, irrespective whether it's the Labour government or not, I would hope that all elected members, but I hope the public at large would actually come back from the party politics aspect, but actually look at how best that we would want to be governed. How best would we deliver services? How best would we tackle those major issues that the peninsula still needs to tackle for current occupants, but for future generations? Because this Southwest Peninsula does play a massive part in the national context of life in Britain, but it could do a lot better if we were to resolve some of those long-standing issues, like the fact that we have a motorway system that stops at Exeter, that we have very much communications that are not fit for purpose for the future. You know, the aviation offer in the peninsula needs to be looked at. We certainly need to deal with the railway system in the far southwest. And those are issues that an elected mayor or a combined regional structure could tackle with speaking with one voice, but with a mandate for the public. Now, I know generally there will be those in the community that don't like the principle of an elected mayor. They're entitled to their view, but I would hope that they would look at the proposals that the government have put before the public now and councils for consultation, and realise that actually you have to work within the envelope that exists. We have a new government. Whatever you think of the government's been elected. That government has a programme of work to do, and we are far better to work with the government of the day, whatever complexion that government is, to try and stand up for our local communities and get the best deal for the population of Plymouth, the population of our wards, but the population of the peninsula first and foremost. And I would hope that the party political nature that might come out of this debate as it evolves in the coming weeks is put to one side to an extent to actually look at what's best for Devon and Cornwall as a whole. Now, for those of us that live in Plymouth, Cornwall is significant and it is important to us. Equally, wider Devon's important to us. But we should make the point that Plymouth is important to them too. We have the trauma hospital for the southwest. So residents from Cornwall, those holidaying in Cornwall, those doing business in Cornwall will often be brought to Derriford for treatment. We have equally those that live in wider Devon coming and using those hospital services in the city of Plymouth. Our major universities in this peninsula are situated in this city. And we had the great privilege, Councillor Mrs Nicholson and I, to attend a graduation recently for healthcare professionals qualifying from the university. And the cohort that were passing that day were principally those that were going to work in Devon and Cornwall having passed their qualifications. So the university status of this city is significant, not just for Plymouth, not just for those that live outside the southwest, but more significantly for those that actually do live in Devon and Cornwall. I would remind members of my declaration in relation to working for Babcock, but I have to say that the naval base of Plymouth has a massive impact on Devon and the whole of Cornwall, and it can't be disputed that that impact is something that needs to be recognised as a significant contribution that the city of Plymouth plays to the peninsula. So when we have, and it is important to recognise local distinctiveness, but when we have the distinctiveness that certainly the Cornish like to recognise, equally, you know, large parts of rural Devon are distinctive, but equally Plymouth is distinctive. So we all have our own distinctiveness that we all need to work together. You know, I have, and I'm sure all of you in the chamber, we holiday in Cornwall, we holiday in Devon. They come to Plymouth for work, they come to Plymouth for commerce, they come to Plymouth to shop. So we are all interdependent on ourselves. And I think it's important that perhaps for the first time ever, all communities in Devon and Cornwall come to a consensus of how Devon and Cornwall is represented, how Devon and Cornwall should be governed in the future, for the benefit of all of Devon and Cornwall, and not just our individual parts. So, Lord Mayor, that's my contribution on devolution. As far as local government's concerned, I would urge all members of the council to work together and to support the evolution of the city of Plymouth. And the evolution of the city of Plymouth has to be a boundary extension of some description. Now, we're not today getting into the detail of what the boundary extension should be. But it is nonsensical for those of us, particularly on the east of the city, representing Plympton and Plymstock, where we have in the Plympton St Mary ward, effectively a dust cart comes from South Hams to pick up from one house at Plimbridge Woods that happens to be in South Hams jurisdiction. You'll have certainly those that represent Southway ward at Tamerton Folia, situation where South Hams, you know, is just on the doorstep. And the absolute stupidity, to be frank, of Devon, when I served donkeys years ago on a strategic plan working group with Devon County and Plymouth and Torbay, when we did agree that there needed to be two new towns in Devon, one being Exeter and the one being Sherford. But how can it be right that you've got a few streets for those in Dunstan Ward, a few streets in Dunstan Ward, but the majority of the new town is in South Hams, when if you were to survey those people, the majority of them are coming from Plymouth, but they depend on Plymouth. They come to shop in Plymstock and Plympton and Plymouth. So it makes no sense moving forward to have local government for the future centred on the current boundary. There does need to be a debate as to the extent of the boundary, but as clearly the officers report, the report before us put together by officers, you know, we're already working under a joint local plan arrangement that takes into account the hinterland effectively of the area on the periphery of Plymouth. So we have those working relationships, and they should be recognised in the boundary of the city of Plymouth. Lots of people worry about the actions of Plymouth if you live on the boundary. But all I would say, where those concerns exist, you must get involved. This council is only as good as its members. It's only as good as the participation that takes place from local communities. So if you don't like what Plymouth's doing, if you don't like what your council's been doing in Devon and Cornwall, get involved. I got involved as a 15-year-old because I didn't like what was going on. And I'm sure all of you in the chamber have got involved in local politics because you wanted a part to play. So if you have concerns, get involved. Try and shape the future of our local government arrangements in Plymouth, Devon and Cornwall. But certainly the boundary that we have at the moment makes no sense to continue a council basis of working. And it's essential that we, as previous contributions have made, that we've set out a pattern of government that is a pattern that can have support from the local community, recognises, as I say, the distinctiveness of Plymouth the communities in Plymouth, the communities on the periphery of Plymouth, but it's a council that can exist for hopefully the next sort of 50 years, and that before we go through perhaps more reorganisation in the future. But it's important that we build from the building blocks of local communities, that we build a strong council, that we speak for the people of Plymouth, and that we hopefully get them on side, work together for a harmonious and sustainable local community. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Dixon. Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and what a start to the year, eh? First of all, I want to start by thanking officers and the leader for pulling themselves out of a mince pie haze to work on these proposals when they came clanging out of Whitehall like pans down a set of stairs. I felt really assured by the calm, professional way that this has been approached by leaders in the council, so I want to start by thanking you and trying to navigate what feels like a situation where you're building a castle on quicksand. There are really good points to the government's proposals that I want to start by highlighting. Buried right at the end, actually, is some of my favourite stuff in this proposal, and that is to finally allow councillors proxy voting and to be able to allow meetings to be attended online. We bring so much of ourselves into this chamber in our role as councillors, and I truly believe that our authority is better for it. So from Councillor Noble's first-hand experience of Derriford, Councillor Stevens' experience as a headmaster, Councillor Beard's dog-eared determination to tackling child exploitation, Councillor Riley's inspiring defence against violence against women and girls. I love being in local government, and their experiences alongside everyone else in the chamber really adds to it. It is also true that our makeup as a council is not reflective of the people that we represent, and we need to do more. And I truly feel that these changes could be transformational in helping more people feel empowered to stand up for their local communities and to be a councillor. Mentioned too in the white paper is the release of the highly anticipated pavement parking consultation. That's the kind of stuff that is proper sexy local government stuff. But it is something that my local residents in Periwinkle Drive will be hugely excited to see finally be released. But to refocus on the crux of what we are talking about today, genuine devolution, where decisions are made at the most local level possible, is a really good thing. Certainly, the two-tier model has not served Devon well. My colleagues have seen a decade of failure of children's services, ineffective special needs support, and disjointed transport planning. At the same time, multiple national crises are taking their toll in our region. Creaking care services, a struggling NHS, a lack of affordable and social housing, plus the escalating environmental and climate crises. The results are deepening inequality and shocking levels of child poverty in Plymouth and parts of Devon. We saw firsthand the consequences of our degrading social fabric during the unrest and riots last summer. Our problems run really deep, and a well-resourced local authority should be on the front line of addressing these issues. I too, in my time in this council, note the advantages that working across a larger remit could bring, like joining up transport links and advocating for larger projects such as floating offshore wind farms, which would deliver jobs, wealth, clean and cheap energy to our region. Again, genuine devolution where decisions are made at the most local level possible is a good thing. The government's vision for strategic authorities with strategic powers over transport, housing, economic development and the environment could work well for the common good, fixing market failures and prioritising local needs. But I do have my doubts. And they come down to listening, time and money. Locally and nationally, I worry that Labour won't listen. Here, we have seen simple public consultations ignored to suit the fancies of the administration. Nationally, Labour have ignored calls to remove the cruel two-child benefit cap and have pushed more than 10,000 children into poverty since they took power. This white paper is set to steamroll over local authorities at breakneck speed to do or die, change or be changed, with no consideration or timely consultation with those it will impact most, our communities. In our briefings, we've been given no facts, no figures. Instead, we've been given lots of nice words about ambition, unlocking potential and saving money. I fear that in reality, a huge amount of taxpayers' money will be wasted just to get us to the starting line of a strategic authority. Our priorities have had to be thrown out at the whim of Whitehall, and actually it's kind of worse than that. It's at the behest of a management firm, PwC, who worked on the paper, thinking that they know more about local government than local governments themselves. I worry about the valuable knowledge we'll lose and the cost of redundancies and recruitment to form the new Labour-led vision for local government. As Plymouth City Council looks to expand, are we as a compact city authority set up to tackle the specific challenges of supporting rural communities, as would need to be the case? The directly elected mayor is presented as a vehicle to streamline decision making. In reality, I think it's a clumsy top-down approach that will add another unnecessary level of bureaucracy. I too have concerns about the legitimacy of a mayor based in Penzance or Exeter or beyond making decisions that will impact Plymouth. I don't think that's true devolution. What would actually fix the problem in local authorities is to fund us adequately and to reverse the devastating impacts of austerity. We have lost 70p in every pound of government funding since 2010. This picture is repeated up and down the country. It's really no wonder that we're failing. Our failure has been designed. Instead of restoring our funding, Labour will have us jump through hoop after hoop in hopes of securing funding just to survive. I agree with contributions from across the chamber. The train is leaving the station and we need to change. While there are real benefits to aspects of these plans, I fear there are too many question marks and too many drawbacks for our communities. So while we can't support these recommendations in full, we're going to remain engaged with the process to ensure that we get the best deal for Plymouth. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Right. I now have Councillor Ricketts, if you'd like to speak.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I wasn't going to speak today, but obviously there seems to be a consensus of support, so just wanted to give an alternative. I'm personally against elected mayors. I believe that communities should be running their own affairs. Plymouth City Council should be running its own affairs without interference. We need different voices in the Southwest. One voice for the whole of the peninsula is an absurdity. Look at those poor Londoners. I'm sure these sort of arguments were put forward for London having one voice, and they've ended up with Sadiq Khan talking a nonsense, okay, and not representing Londoners or this country at all. And one person as an elected mayor for this peninsula may work out, depending on your views and your thoughts and your relationship with that elected representative, but it could go so badly wrong for Plymouth, okay? And it's a dangerous move. Each community, county, local authority needs a powerful voice, and it will be diminished by one voice for the peninsula. We need a government getting on with running the country. We don't need this English devolution white paper, and we need to make sure the government knows it. And I'm sure there'll be a lot of local authorities up and down the country making their thoughts clear. And I will be, in my own capacity, voting against this to send my own message that I don't agree with it. Plymouth does not need a peninsula elected mayor. This is a big, big distraction from a failing government doing an appalling job. And this is just another nonsense policy that we want no part of. It doesn't work. This devolution paper needs to be kicked into the long grass. We need to tell this Labour government that we won't have it, that Plymouth needs to be running its own affairs as the generally excellent local authority that we are. So I'll be voting against. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Dan, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I was sitting here thinking, oh, new year, new start. And one of the things we've been saying is about consensus and about this not being about party politics. This is about the politics of place. And we really need to make sure that we keep this about the politics of place and not the politics of different types of political parties. Because the citizens of Plymouth want us, as their elected members, to make sure that we make the right decisions that are going to benefit the people who have given us that trust within Plymouth and also the wider peninsula. For those councillors like Councillor Nicholson, Councillor Coker, Councillor Pemberley, Councillor Evans, we've been around a long time and we've worked with our neighbouring authorities, our local district councils, our local counties to make sure that when we make decisions that can benefit Plymouth, more often than not, they benefit our partners. And we've done that in a very, very, very collaborative way. And I think we've punched above our weight. We really have made Plymouth as a place, as an aspirational place for growth. Because if you just think about what Councillor Evans was talking about, what we're proud of in Plymouth, I'd written down the uniqueness of different areas across the peninsula. And I thought Plymouth Sound, National Marine Park, the Naval Base, our maritime history, MOD, what we do at Babcock. We've got 3 universities in the city. So if we put all that collaboration with all the other universities that work across the peninsula, if we put all our blue stuff with the cultural heritage that happens across the North Devon coast, that happens all around Cornwall, if we recognise that we've each got our own distinctiveness, so we've got Dartmoor National Park, we've got the culture of Cornwall, we've got the English Riviera in Torbay, we've got Exeter City, we've got the new towns of Sherford, we've got up in East Devon. We have got so much we can build on, but at the moment, each of those distinctive places work a little bit in isolation. So we have a chance now to bring all that distinctiveness together to make it a combined voice. We talk about the fact that we're an urban centre, but you know what, we've still got the same problems because we're on the coast as the coastal towns. We've got rural towns and little villages around Plymouth that suffer real deprivation. And actually, having a voice which will spread right across all those communities to bring a collective voice for those things that matter about funding, about education, about skills, about our economy, about how we move around, how people get to work, how they can upskill and access the new exciting jobs that are going to come into the region is really important. And rather doing that collectively or individually within our own little pots, we'll be able to have a big voice. So this strategic authority is about having a strong voice. And the one person at the top is going to have to listen to the city leaders underneath, the unitary leaders underneath, to find out what each of those individual unity areas want and what are their priorities. And sitting underneath that will be the elected members. It will be us. It will be us setting Plymouth's priorities, which will feed into the South West Peninsula's priorities, which will go through whoever it is up to government to say, this is what we want, this is what we want to do, this is what we want the money for. Rather than us fighting against each other, it will be a collective voice. We will still be responsible in Plymouth or anybody else for those who empty the bins, who do the potholes. We'll still be dealing with the people who don't want to have a tree planted there or don't want a house built over there. That is still our job. That is not going to change. But we will be able to say, we want better road links, we want better skills funding, we want a better rail network, we want to do this for the green economy as a collective voice. So I do not understand why we have to bring party politics into this. We have to be united in Plymouth City Council as to what we want to support the growth of Plymouth and also the aspirations for the wider Southwest Peninsula. So we can speak for our coastal communities, we can speak for urban centres, we can speak for the moorland towns, because we will be speaking together. And actually, it's a really good socialist model, isn't it? Because actually, having all those strong voices looking at our priorities will give us the benefit which we've not had before.
Thank you, Councillor Down. And now I have Councillor Allen, please.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. I'll keep this fairly brief. I just wanted to say that when I was reading through this white paper, I was looking at the opportunity and the potential for the skills and education and the growth and infrastructure across the region. We've got this amazing opportunity to draw down all these powers and resources from Westminster. We've desperately been crying out for this across the Southwest Peninsula for too long now. In my day job for the National Education Union, I go into schools and work with them right across the region, and I've seen sort of firsthand the opportunities that people are just crying out for children and families to have the opportunities to develop the skills and the educational opportunities, to develop the local economy, to drive the growth. This is absolutely what is needed. It's going to have the most wide-ranging impact since the Eric Pickles reforms of 2010, except this will be a good, positive reform. Instead of devolving the cuts, this will be devolving power and resources, and I think we should all get behind it. As Councillor Dan said so powerfully, this is an opportunity for us all to work together rather than fighting over little crumbs from Westminster. Maybe it's the trade unionist in me. I make no apologies for that, but I do honestly believe together we are stronger, and this is a real opportunity for the Southwest to finally shine. Thank you, my Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Councillor Wood.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. I very much agree with most of what has been said by the Leader of the Council and others in this chamber today. 10 years ago, when I was a Hampshire County Councillor, I argued that Hampshire should be a single unitary authority. Remove the borough and district councils, remove the duplication, simplify the service provision, and actually have a simpler model that the local public could understand, so they knew exactly who was responsible for what piece of service provision. I think this has the opportunity to deliver real sustainable change which simplifies local government structures, removes unnecessary tiers, and that is to be welcomed. It also has the potential to reduce the number of councillors. And I think the reality is it absolutely will reduce the number of councillors. The white paper says that 500,000 people is required to be a unitary authority. That's obviously twice the size of ourselves here. You couldn't fit 100 people in this chamber. So when you look at actually reorganising local authorities, Plymouth City Council will cease to exist in its current form. It may cease to exist entirely. There's a couple of forms that you could look at. You could have one single unitary authority for Devon. You could have one single unitary authority for Devon and Cornwall. There's other measures as well that you could look at. But the reality is things will change quite dramatically, and there's huge opportunities for us to grasp to make that happen, to deliver the most efficient and effective level of service that we can for our residents, because ultimately that is why we are here. I don't particularly like the name of the Peninsula mayoral structure. I think actually the Devon and Cornwall Mayoral Strategic Authority is more pleasant on the tongue. People around the country would understand exactly what we mean, who we are, where we are. People don't go on holiday to the Southwest Peninsula, they tend to go on holiday to Devon and Cornwall. I think that would be a better way of doing it. I appreciate that Councillor Evans highlighted that what took place in 1997, of course at that time I was only 7 years old, so I think it's about time that it was revisited and looked at again. I note, of course, that the leader says about the independence of Plymouth. In Hampshire, we had member decision days where county councillors from each borough met to decide on highway capital spending, for example. So for us in Fareham, we'd have all the county councillors in Fareham meet to then decide what we did with the capital budget. So there's a means of devolving power across larger unitary authorities into individual members in certain areas, and actually provides a greater level of authority for county councillors, for unitary authority councillors, than is currently held here. There's a couple of questions I do have, and a couple of items I'd like to clarify, because of course Devon County Council met this morning to discuss this very matter. In their report, it outlines that there have been ongoing discussions between Cornwall, Plymouth, Torbay and Devon, but it's not been possible to reach agreement. So I do think we need to work together on this, but we also need to recognise that maybe not everyone does agree, and we could have something imposed upon us. So it's really key that we work collaboratively together to ensure we get the best possible deal for ourselves down here in Plymouth. And of course, I know what others have said about service provision. You may know that I live 50 yards over the City Council boundary in South Hams in Woolwell. You can't get into Woolwell without going through Plymouth. Our rubbish collections have to go into Plymouth to get through. I can't drive onto the moors or into the city centre without going across the boundary. It is a bit of a nonsense that such an artificial boundary exists, which of course causes problems for local residents, because you can't use the same libraries, you can't use the same tips. Things that people want to use, you have to go further afield. So technically speaking, as a Plymouth City Councillor, I can only use the library in Tavistock and not the libraries here. It is a bit of a nonsense. So it's about time that we looked at reorganising how these things are actually structured. The Devon County Council report states that the purpose of their report is not to consider any future detailed reorganisational proposals at this stage, as the guidance has not been received from government, but to agree the approach as requested by government. Now that's quite different from what we have here, where we've made a very clear proposal about the structure of Cornwall, Devon, Plymouth and Exeter and Torbay. So it's interesting how we've taken a slightly different approach to what's been put in there. Sorry? Okay, lovely. When you sum up, happy to be corrected, I'm fine with that. That's what we're all here for, because this is collaborative. That's what I like. So overall, I think this is a really positive move that can do an awful lot of good for us. We're being quite brave because it will seriously affect possibly the number of councillors elected, our roles and responsibilities. But I think we need to look at this as a whole and think this is a overdue model which will provide multi-year funding, which has been missing in local government for years. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wood. Councillor Finn, please.
Yeah, thank you, Lord Mayor. I just want to say that I agree with a lot of what has been said here today. However, as we all know in these things, the devil is in the detail. There's an old adage, isn't it? If it isn't broke, why fix it? Here today, there's been no scrutiny, no time for adequate discussion amongst members, stakeholders to debate a seismic change in the local democratic structures. And basically being asked to go with the flow on the pretext it will all come out the other end is nothing more than a utopia. You know, when you look at the statements within the actual devolution document, and I find this as a contradictory statement to what's been said here about the power that Plymouth will have in the region overall, and how we can be overruled. And it's under section 213, statutory devolution framework, in which it states the public need a clear understanding of who is responsible for what in their area, so that they can hold local leaders accountable. It goes on to say, we also want to introduce a more consistent, transparent and effective set of voting arrangements. When residents, for example, elect a mayor, they need to know that key decisions cannot be blocked, and this is the key wording, cannot be blocked by single councils. So even though we may propose something that's good for the people, in the interest of the people of Plymouth, it can be blocked by the regional mayor. That's in the legislation itself. It clearly states under 213. Mayors will also be expected to work in partnership with local authorities and key stakeholders, but a desire for perfect consensus must not get in the way of tough decisions. To enable this, and this is another worrying aspect of the proposal, is when the framework becomes law, it will override any existing governance arrangements. That's not my words, that's the words of the government and the government paper. So such a statement should worry anyone here today thinking the strategic authority under the proposed legislation is the right way to go. The regional mayor has other priorities. A strategic authority may be unable to block a diktat from the regional mayor, who decides then to dice up the funding formulas in their own regions and leave us found wanting. Our voice is therefore diminished. How is this democracy? How can we possibly make a well thought out case here today when we don't even know the mechanism that could be used to override existing governance arrangements? And whichever way we look at it, it will be foisted upon us, the mayor, under section 2.2, widening and deepening devolution in England. We want to see all of England benefit from devolution, with full devolution coverage across the country, at least to the level of strategic authorities, which we would obviously start off with an ambition to move to a mayoral model. In other words, to complete Labour's map. And then we go into, we as a council, we're heading to one, and it's something we cannot avoid, and it's been picked up in the local media. In fact, there was an article, and I just want to quote from the article that was published on the 20th of December. It was in both the Times and the Daily Mail. And I think it's a pertinent point, because what financial burden are we going to be putting on our constituents? What is clear within the legislation is that there will be existing combined authority mayors already levy a precept on top of council taxes in Manchester, Liverpool and Cambridge. If we have an elected regional mayor, is there going to be a precept loaded onto our taxpayers? The second thing that was highlighted was obviously we're heading towards £1 billion worth of debt. Now, the regional debt for all councils has circulated to 43 billion. Across England, 21 councils, 160 district councils, there's believed to be 24 billion of debt held. Another 19 billion worth of debt can be found on the smaller councils set to be included in the mergers. The management of council debt is an issue that's yet to be resolved, as the Treasury is likely to disagree with Ms Rayner to how the money should be distributed. Another Whitehorse source told the Times that debt would end up staying local. Example, West Northamptonshire was created with the merger of 3 smaller councils in 2021 and now holds £570 million worth of debt. Is the government going to take that off the balance sheet? And the question is, how is it going to be distributed amongst the councils? It's a mismatch of new tiers, new taxes, taking decision-making further away from the residents.
Excuse me, Councillor Finn, you are over time. If you could draw this to a halt, please.
Okay, I'll bet. From my perspective, it's too early to jump aboard a train to nowhere, and I'd argue it's best to adopt a wait-and-see approach to see where the train stops. There are too many unknowns at this juncture to contemplate, affecting both the council, democratic governments and our stakeholders. I would argue we need to formulate a review of the white paper in order to provide answers to questions that may arise, and then only bring it that juncture, bring it back to the council for consideration.
Thank you, Councillor. I now have Councillor Lang, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'll remain seated with your permission, if that's okay. I just wanted to, I wasn't going to speak actually, but I wanted to just address a couple of things that have been raised. One of the things that seems to keep coming up is pace, and I can understand that speed is something that might stand out because, over the last few years, that's something that's been absent from government discussions and decisions. Consultation is built into this process. It's not right to say that it isn't. And also talking about diminishment is a fundamental misunderstanding of what we're talking about here. You talk to Bev Craig, the leader of Manchester, you talk to Aruj Shah, the leader of Oldham, they wouldn't say they're diminished by being part of a combined authority. They lead their councils still in a very ambitious way, but they see that being part of that combined authority has real benefits for them and for their communities. I saw the reports of the meeting of the Council of Nations and Regions, and I felt so bereft on behalf of Plymouth that our voice wasn't bigger in other than being represented as part of England. And to me, that is a real reason why we need to be in this conversation. again, it's really important to say this isn't a merger. That's a completely different thing. This is about the parts of the Southwest working together to make a greater whole. I spoke to somebody the other day who is doing some research and had been reading council minutes from decades and decades ago. And I want people who read the minutes of this meeting in 2075 to see that we as a council, regardless of our political colour, really seized and recognised the opportunity that this offers our city, our residents and the region. And I'm glad to see so much consensus here, and that will be reflected when people look back on this debate in years to come. As Councillor Allen said, we are stronger together. We need to move forward on this, and I'm really looking forward to voting yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lang. Councillor Rainsford, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'd like to start, I think, by making some observations based on the fact that I represented the north of the city for 10 years at Westminster. And we had constant battle. MPs cross-party, across the southwest, had a constant battle with ministers and civil servants to get them to understand the southwest, its needs, its priorities. Frequent parliamentary answers came back to questions we raised, which highlighted the fact that the southwest did not get its fair share of funding, so whether it's transport or other areas of our local economy. It was deeply frustrating. I was therefore quite pleased to be asked to chair briefly before the end of the last Labour government the Regional Select Committee which oversaw the southwest. We had cross-party debates on transport, on the economy, and what was very, very clear was we had some very different priorities to those which those in power, the ministers sitting in Whitehall, had for our region. We wanted autonomy, we wanted power, and we wanted the money down to grassroots. Last Labour government tried to get regional government and failed. And it failed because it didn't put its money where its mouth was. You know, it was administrative proposals, but it actually wasn't the meat in the sandwich that we're getting with this offer. And I'm hugely supportive of what's being brought forward here today. It does enable us to maintain our identity whilst having the power and control within our southwest region for actually how money is spent down here. I would much rather that model where we put our priorities forward than have somebody sitting in Westminster take a decision for us. At the moment, this is a white paper. It's not legislation. It's quite different. There's still some consultation around this, obviously. It will be tweaked, but it will happen. It's a white paper, it's a statement of intent. So let's not run away from that one. And if I can just finally, on the issue of mayors, and the London mayor particularly, if we hadn't had that single voice in London, I can guarantee we would not have got the 2012 Olympics, we would not have free school meals for all primary school children, and we would not have clean air in that city. That's the difference that single voice has made working with the London boroughs. Councillor Ricketts can shake his head, but believe me, I've lived there and I can tell you there's a difference. So on that note, Lord Mayor, I will sit down, but merely to say I think this is a huge opportunity for our city and we need to grapple it and grasp it cross-party.
Thank you, Councillor Rainsford. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Evans, do you wish to sum up?
Thank you very much indeed. I think this is one of the biggest days at the office we have ever had. As I say, I've been here a while, and the nearest parallel I've got to this is 1964, which, believe it or not, I wasn't around to see. When Plymouth was expanded then. Yeah, it was a bit earlier than that. But the thing is, What happened then was that we managed to expand our boundaries, set a course for the future of sustainable local government, and respect the traditions of the communities that we took into the city. And we'll have to do that again. That's exactly what we'll have to do this time. There is no choice here, I have to say. The government has made it quite clear that the Devo train has been said, has left the station. Some people have already been on it. Some people are driving it. I want us to be on that train. And it's really important to the future prosperity of my grandkids and yours that we do that. I wouldn't want us to be regarded as the people who bottled it when the opportunity came. Because in this chamber, we've been complaining for years about the government not listening to us and not giving us stuff and having the money and making the decisions and not understanding anything about us. Here's an opportunity. By the way, the Labour government put this devolution business in the manifesto. They promised they'd do it, and they are doing it, and that's great. And it is happening at pace, and it will be uncomfortable because some people are quite happy with the way things are. But that isn't necessarily their residents speaking, that's them and their self-interest. So what this is about putting us, I'm saying, city before party. Let's be honest, taking in large swathes of the Devon countryside, I have to say, you can't just use a binoculars to spot a Labour voter, you have to take a microscope. So I don't say that this is in any way to anybody's particular political advantage. What I am saying is city before party. That's my view. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm here, because I love Plymouth. And I want to see us to continue to run this city with Plymouthians and people who live in Plymouth in the council running it, not as was the case between 74 and 97, when you had people from North Devon and people from South Devon with no interest or skin in the game as far as Plymouth is concerned, making all the decisions about us. So what we're getting here is an opportunity to take back control. Actually, having taken back control, to keep control. That's the first thing we've got to do as far as LGR is concerned. There is no alternative. They will abolish us if we can't make a case for why Plymouth should exist as a viable unitary authority, okay? That's why we need unity of purpose about that. But the second bit is this thing about the single voice. I mean, I've heard it said that Andy Burnham is the voice of the North and all that kind of stuff. He's not. I mean, if you listen to our colleague Bev Craig, she says that Andy's the captain of the team. He's the captain of the team, but he can score no goals without the rest of the team. And the rest of the team are the 10 local authorities in Greater Manchester that deliver the goods. And Bev Craig and Sir Richard Leese, her predecessor, grew Manchester from 550,000 to 750,000 in the last 20 years without Andy Burnham, more or less. So let's not worry about all of this spooking on elected mayors. Elected mayors for a region will be there as the conduit to cash and power and authority, which will make councillors that know what they're doing, that have firm plans, that have ambition, and it'll give them the authority and power and cash to deliver the goods for their communities. That's what's at stake with this. And it will happen to us unless we make it happen for us. And that's the opportunity that you councillors have got today, to get on the Devo train and to get on the LGR train. And let's make the weather for Plymouth, not have people make the weather for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Councillors, we will now move to the vote. We will vote using the electronic voting system: green to vote in favour, red to vote against, and amber to abstain. Thank you. As the motion is passed. That concludes the business of full council. Thank you, members, for your time and engagement. I wish you and all those watching a good evening and hope you all stay safe and well. Thank you.